Hello, y'all. Welcome to Sipping Tea with Sabrina. You know what? In just a second, we'll be sharing the tea on LinkedIn for nonprofits. But if you've never met me before, I'm Sabrina. I'm the founder of Supporting World Hope LLC, a coaching and consulting company. I started after 25 years in the industry. I train CEOs, board of directors, and employees across diverse sectors in leadership skills, focusing on revenue, relationships, and retention. I'm a keynote speaker, a facilitator, a coach, an author, and a strategic planning expert. And we have with us today, Noreen Qatar, and I know I butchered her last name, with NQ Creatives. And this conversation is going to be critical to those wanting to use LinkedIn to its fullest potential, whether you're a nonprofit or an association or a business with a purpose. And that's why we have Noreen with us. So, Noreen, I want to say thank you for being here, first of all. And I also want you to share a little bit about yourself and your experience. I want to welcome the people that's in the room. I see some people in the room, but I also want you to share a little bit about yourself and your experience.
Well, thank you, Sabrina, for inviting me again to this chat today, and I'm so excited to be here this morning. So a little bit about me. I actually have a variety of experiences in nonprofit. I started out as a advocate who's done a lot of volunteer work, and then I used my storytelling and online marketing to work with nonprofits to help them position in front of communities, raise awareness around their mission, engage with communities, and get them involved in their activities and programs and fundraising efforts. And I do that by leveraging media storytelling practices, including social media marketing with all the major platforms, including LinkedIn. So I've been doing this for several years. I really got to have the experience of getting to know different nonprofits and learning about their causes and the issues that they represent and help advance the changes that they're trying to make through growing their online awareness on social media and LinkedIn.
Wow, that's a breadth of experience. And I'm going to tell you, it's something that nonprofits underutilize, especially LinkedIn. And so I'm so happy to have you here with us today to specifically talk about LinkedIn. But, you know, as we get through this conversation, if something else comes up that you want to share, please feel free to do so. So I have a couple of questions here. And one of the questions I have is how can nonprofits effectively leverage LinkedIn to expand their network and reach their target audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are actually many ways. The first thing I would say is to be active on LinkedIn. I know it can sometimes, I know people can sometimes forget to post on LinkedIn or to be active on there, to check it, to include it in their daily or weekly activities. But it's important to keep that profile active. And for your nonprofit, you can create a company page specifically for your organization. And help grow your followers on that page and share content. But also, if you have your own profile, it's really great to share that content onto your own newsfeed. So help to really boost that reach of those posts that you're sharing so that you can share it with your own network. But I think it's really important to also engage in conversations on LinkedIn. There are a lot of active threads, there are a lot of discussions happening. And that's really important for nonprofits that are addressing, specific issues, is that they can engage in those conversations, discover what conversations are happening that are related to what they represent, the issues that they're addressing. So it's important to also be part of those conversations, as well as posting your own content, updating people about your nonprofit or raising awareness around the issues that you have. So that's another really important thing. And now LinkedIn has a lot of great opportunities like LinkedIn newsletters. There are also LinkedIn groups. So it's utilizing all these different features of LinkedIn to make the most of the experience of using LinkedIn and to really, be able to reach a larger network. And then when you have your own profile on LinkedIn, you can also find people that would be good to connect with, whether those are potential donors or people who can get involved with your organization or potential partners. So you can use the search tool, which lets you filter based on different categories, and do some searches on there and find people that you can connect with. And when you do connect with them, you can invite them to follow your company page, so that they can get the updates that your nonprofit is sharing.
That makes sense. I'm going to say this, it's story time for me. As a CEO sitting in that seat, I never took advantage of LinkedIn for my organization. I didn't quite understand. I was, let's build Facebook, let's build Facebook. But there's a whole nother target audience of decision makers on LinkedIn. So I know that's something that I discovered after the fact. I wish I would have known that when I was sitting in that CEO seat. So what are some other common mistakes that nonprofits make when using LinkedIn, and how can they avoid them?
Yeah, absolutely. So one mistake that I've noticed on LinkedIn is that the content that's being shared is very much related to fundraising and getting people to make donations, which is definitely important, but it shouldn't be the only content that's being posted. I think it's also really important to offer value. You want to share content that really piques people's interest, gets people to learn more about the issue. So that could be something that's informative. It can be something that's engaging. So I think it's really important to think about the value that you can offer, not just trying to get people to donate or, to sign up for something, but also to learn more about something, to provide content that, gives them information that they would be interested in. So I think that's really important, is to diversify the content that you're sharing,
Hmm.
and have some value be part of that. The other thing is also diversifying the type of media assets that you're using. So having photos, having sometimes videos, having certain links. And I think also with LinkedIn that I've noticed that some organizations do, which I think is a mistake, is keeping the content pretty dry. I know it's LinkedIn, but it can be fun. So definitely throw in the emojis in the captions and the content. That increases engagement a lot. It does that with all of the major platforms, but definitely on LinkedIn as well. So it doesn't have to just be, dry, informative, factual content. Have the facts in there, but you can use a conversational tone, make it a little bit more fun, make it a little bit more engaging. And then that's the same with the content too, in terms of what you're sharing, is that you can share some of the behind the scenes of what's happening with your nonprofit. So share those volunteer pictures, the fun things that are going on at your organization, the little moments that you're having, because people can have a little bit look into what is a nonprofit culture that you have, and kind of show the people who are behind the scenes. So I think mixing up that content, so it's not just like, this is what we do, here's our link to donate, which I see a lot of nonprofits do that. But I think it's really important to have a variety of content to show, the personalities behind your nonprofit, and a little bit more about your brand.
Yeah. Listen to what Noreen is saying, because just think about this is in my head. I'm like, okay, if LinkedIn was a person and the only time I show up is to ask for money, or any social media is a person and the only time I show up to ask for money, I'm not going to pay attention to you, because then you're seeing me as an ATM machine. So just land the plane, Noreen, because people don't get it sometimes. But that's exactly what I pictured in my mind when you said that. So that's a great tip. Um, so, what strategies can nonprofit use to optimize their LinkedIn profiles and make a strong impression on potential donors and partners?
Yeah, I would say to start out with, make sure to fill out as much information as you can. So, the more that you fill out, the more optimal your profile becomes. Think about the profile picture that you have, the cover image that you have. Make sure that those are aligned with your brand. Have those specific keywords, because the thing is with nonprofits is that I think more than Facebook, even a little bit maybe more than Twitter, and Instagram, is that people do specific searches on
Mhm.
LinkedIn to find certain people, certain organizations and companies, certain topics. So it's really important to plug in those specific keywords that are related to what people might search, and that can help get your profile and your nonprofit discovered. So it's really about, people, when people search in Google, LinkedIn profiles come
Mhm.
up with those keywords because there's a lot of words that you can put on your LinkedIn profile.
Mhm.
So really think about the words that you want to use, and it might be helpful to start out with creating like a document and like put down some keywords and then pull out the ones that you think are the most relevant to use for your profile. So that's another way to optimize your profile. Have a little bit of different content on your profile, like maybe a video introduction, certain feature links that you think are really important. So if you have any particular toolkits or PDF documents that are like fact sheets and things like that that you really want people to know about, you can have that be part of your features.
Mhm.
So that's another way to like optimize your profile, and it's really just about keeping it active. The more you post, the more people are gonna, the more the algorithm is going to show your content.
Now you open the door for this. This is not one of the questions that we discussed, but I'm going to ask you: is there a best practice around the frequency of posts on LinkedIn? Is it better to like post the same time consistently? Do you need to post twice a day? What was you opened the door, so I had to go in and ask.
Yeah. So this is what I'm going to say. I actually think the most important thing is not the frequency, it's the content. As long as there's valuable content, it could be two, three, four times a day. Because if you're sharing things that people really want to know about and people are going to click on and people are going to look forward to seeing, it's not going to matter if it's, 2 to 4 posts per day. I would say, posting irregularly is
Mhm.
not recommended. So if you're just posting once a month, that is probably way too low for frequency. And maybe if you're posting 20 times a day, that might be a little too much on LinkedIn if you're posting every minute, because then some of the content is going to get buried. But I would say keep it consistent. So it's probably going to vary depending on the nonprofit and the size and the type of content creation that they're able to participate in. But I would say doing it on weekly, so at least like maybe once a day. The most infrequent I would say would be no less than three times per week. But I would say like 1 to 2 times a day is a really good number for most nonprofits.
Okay. And I want to revisit the profile keyword piece because I think
Mhm.
a lot of nonprofits may just like copy and paste their mission statement there in that about section. You're saying you need to be more strategic than that. Like if you're
Yeah,
youth development, put youth development or whatever your focus is, if it's education or arts, or is that what I'm hearing? Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely put your mission there. And then, make sure you put some keywords in your profile that can help when people are searching certain types of content or people to network with. So it really helps when you put those keywords in, it helps with your profile being able to be discovered. So yes, I would say really think about those specific keywords that kind of like SEO almost, that people would search and your profile and your company page would come up.
Okay, perfect. So then how important is content creation on LinkedIn for nonprofits? And you kind of answered this and you kind of alluded to it, but let's get more detail on it. What types of content tend to perform best?
Yeah, so that also varies with nonprofits, but I would say definitely having compelling visuals,
Mhm.
whether that is through the photos or videos. It's really important that the visual component is compelling, so it's not just like words on there. That's why I also recommend having emojis. So it's about making the post visually compelling as possible, because those tend to get more engagement. But it's also what you're putting in the content. So I always find that the best type of content is any piece that really drives discussion and
Mhm.
conversations. So it might just be including a question in your post to get people to comment, to share their thoughts and opinions or their take on something, or to contribute to the conversation. So the more inviting you are to people to be part of the conversation, not just sharing like a piece of information or a link, but having people to engage, is really valuable. So I think, yes, anything that will drive conversation, because the more that people comment on the post, the more the post will show up in newsfeed. So that's the most performing content that I've seen, is anything that really gets people to be involved and be part of the conversation.
Okay, I got a question because I just read something in someone's newsletter and I tried it and it worked the first time, not necessarily the second time, but it was around LinkedIn polls and doing LinkedIn polls and as you know the type of content, but there's a lot of things that are being said. So I'm going to ask you because you're an expert. Do LinkedIn polls, but use them earlier in the morning, post them earlier in the morning, and you should get better engagement. What's your
Yeah,
thoughts?
yes. So the reason why it's suggested to do early in the morning is that it's a common time that people are using LinkedIn.
Mm,
Like during their workday, a lot of times people will just pull up LinkedIn early in the morning, maybe right before they start their workday or before they head out to work. They just, quickly check their LinkedIn profile. So it's very common that it's a common time that people will look at their LinkedIn. So that's usually the time where you'll get the most participants for a poll, because there's a lot of people who are going on it. And the thing is that it doesn't take very long to answer a poll. You just check which box you want. So it's not like they have to read an article or do something that takes a little bit more time, or like think so much about. So it's a time of the day where you'll get a lot of people to participate in. I think another time is during lunch hour, because that's
mhm.
another time that people pull up their phone and maybe scan their LinkedIn profile when they're going on their lunch break. So I would say, yes, like early in the morning or during lunch hour are probably the best times to post a LinkedIn poll.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense to me. Thank you for answering that. I just wanted to make sure. And for my lack of creatives out there, as Noreen was talking, I was thinking, wow. So, like, if you're an animal shelter, you can go in with a poll and you can say, hey, I adopted my three. Well, in my case, I have two dogs and a cat, right? I adopted my dogs and cats from the animal shelter. Have you ever adopted from this shelter before, or a shelter? And you put yes or no, and people will do yes or no, right? And they'll probably share a story around their pet, because I like talking about my pets. So sometimes I think we lack that creativity, and you just sparked some
Mm.
creativity there. I thank you for that. And so, if you're just joining us, welcome to the broadcast. And we're talking about LinkedIn for nonprofits. And we've covered some really good things. We've covered those common mistakes, like don't be going on there just asking for money. You got to educate, you got to entertain, you got to vary your content um, on LinkedIn, and make sure you're using keywords in your profile and really optimize your page to put features, was mentioned, maybe feature checklists, PDFs, whatever it is, you got to have that up there. So this has been really great. I'm like taking notes for my business too, because nonprofit is a business. Nonprofit is just a tax designation. So all this really applies if you have a small business as well. So I got another question for you, Noreen. So LinkedIn offers various features. You alluded to some of them, but they have groups, they have events. How can nonprofit use these features to engage with their audience and drive meaningful interactions?
Yeah, so I think the LinkedIn events is definitely something very powerful. Absolutely, because it's very much, you're inviting people on LinkedIn, and it's on LinkedIn too. So it's not like they have to go somewhere else. So it's really great to utilize that. because when people do sign up for your LinkedIn event or when they've seen it, the time that that event happens, it reminds people that are on LinkedIn, so they get the automated reminders. And it's really great to so with LinkedIn events you can like do like a live video, kind of like this
Yeah.
in a way, and you can get people on LinkedIn to be part of that and to be involved, and it's a great way to to be able to reach people who are not even in your location because it's virtual, and to share information if you're doing that during an event, or opportunities for people to be involved in your organization, or to raise awareness around your mission. So it's a great tool that provides a lot of convenience just because of how easy and accessible it is to use it and for people to be part of it. And it shows up on your profile. It shows up on people's news feeds. So it's a great way to expand that reach to get people to be part of it. And also the algorithm will make sure that when it's a LinkedIn event, that it spreads more far and wide than if you were to share like a link to event that someone can sign up for. So that's another really great way to use LinkedIn events. And then LinkedIn groups are really helpful as well, but it's really important to keep them active and
Mhm.
to regularly post in them and to engage them, because if they're not active, if people are not posting often in the groups, then people tend to abandon them, or they just don't they don't check them often. And it doesn't mean that you have to always like post constantly in the groups. But I would say that what's important is to make sure that there are dialogues happening. So, spark the conversations in those groups to get people involved and to get people to share in those groups as well.
The other feature that, well, I'm going to say something about LinkedIn groups
Hmm.
compared to Facebook groups. I think that this is Sabrina's opinion, right? I don't want anybody to come after me. I think that Facebook groups tend to be a little bit more active than LinkedIn groups. What's your opinion on that?
I think they do, but I think it also depends. I think what it is with LinkedIn groups, specifically for nonprofits, is that it's easier to find the people that are very relevant to your organization on LinkedIn to join those groups than Facebook, because it's hard to find specific roles that people
Mhm.
have, specific job titles, maybe specific organizations or donors. It's a little bit hard to find, to have like a targeted search on Facebook, and to get people to join those groups, because Facebook has a little bit more, people's profiles are a little bit more private usually. But LinkedIn, you can find those people and invite them to your group. So it's a little bit more, even though Facebook groups, I think, are a little bit, they get
Mhm.
more engagement. There are more people involved in Facebook groups. LinkedIn is a little bit more targeted, so that you can find the most relevant people that you want to engage in conversations with. And then to encourage that active participation, it's really about, posting engaging content and relevant content and sparking conversations there, because you can really get people to chat anywhere. It's as long as
Mhm.
the conversation is provoking enough, it really gets people to want to be involved in the discussions.
Mhm.
So it's really about having that strong strategy behind it.
Yeah. Another feature that I think is overlooked on LinkedIn, that was introduced last year, I believe, is you can schedule now post on LinkedIn. Does that hurt the algorithm?
No.
No.
No, you could definitely, and you could schedule post on LinkedIn itself, like it used to be through a third party
Right.
app like Hootsuite or Buffer.
Buffer.
But
Mhm.
now you could schedule it on LinkedIn, and no, it doesn't hurt the algorithm. No,
Perfect, perfect.
yeah,
Because I'm asking for my CEOs out there who's like, or for that social media person that said, I don't have time to do another social media platform. Of course, I know that's where you come in, and we're going to talk about it at the end, but I'm talking to that small shop out there going, I ain't got time. You can schedule this stuff now. Um,
yes.
so, so LinkedIn has become, again, they've become increasingly visual, with features like LinkedIn stories and multiple posts.
Mhm.
How can nonprofits incorporate visual content into their LinkedIn strategy effectively?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned a little bit before, having some of those behind the scenes photos are really important because it really shows like a little bit about your nonprofit and the people who are kind of behind the scenes, and people like to see that. It really gives a little bit more. I think it just shows a little bit more personality, and it's not just like dry content happening. But visuals are really important because it attracts people's attention more than just seeing words. Like when people see the visual, then they look more into the content. So really having a compelling image is relevant. But also, I think a photo can tell a lot. Like it tells a whole story. So even a photo that captures what your mission is about. So like as you mentioned, an animal shelter can show pictures of the animals that are there. To really kind of provoke that emotional response from people. I think when people see things visually than just hearing it or reading about it, it does something else to a person, and it gets them more involved. So I would say like capturing photos that really demonstrate what your mission is about, or the issues that you're trying to raise awareness about, or issues that you're trying to address and solve. I think that is also really helpful in engaging with people. And also, like, I know a lot of nonprofits will participate in certain events, or the people who are working in nonprofits will go to certain events. So it's really good to take photos of that to kind of show things that you're doing and the difference that you're making. It really shows that impact as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. If you heard that, you need to put that in practice. So, building a strong LinkedIn presence often involves engaging with other users, because you do mention that, and participating in discussions. So, what are some of those best practices for nonprofits to engage, with their LinkedIn community authentically?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar to how you would gauge in person. So be a human being, and yeah, I would say, yeah, just be a human being, and kind of being willing to share your thoughts and just being respectful of hearing other people's thoughts is really important. And just getting to know people, and kind of really paying attention to what they're saying and understanding what they're saying, and then responding to that. But it's kind of very much like a virtual party. It's almost like the way you would go to a network event. I would say I would approach it in a very similar way, and speak in a very similar way, except you're typing and you're writing a comment. But yeah, I would say really the conversations are always really great for discovering like other people and with the values that they care about. So this is a huge opportunity for nonprofits to find people on LinkedIn that would be relevant to get involved in their organization, whether they're somebody who would help with the fundraising or they would amplify their message. Like this is where you can find the people that matter, and keep that engagement going, because you want to build those relationships too. And it's a great way to get people to join your newsletter list, for example, or to sign up for a webinar that you might be having, so you can create that long-term relationship with those people, because you're hearing what they care about. So again, if you're an animal shelter and you find somebody who's very passionate about animal welfare, and they're talking a lot about it, like that's somebody that you want to engage with. And then you can invite them, like, hey, we have this monthly newsletter, would love for you to sign up for it. So it's a great way to like get to really reach communities, basically. And then you can invite them to follow your page once you have that relationship started.
Okay. So, how can nonprofits, now you alluded to this, it can't be just used for this purpose, but we know what most of our nonprofits are thinking, right? How can nonprofits utilize LinkedIn for fundraising purposes? And what are some of the effective strategies for leveraging, LinkedIn to raise funds and support their mission?
Yeah, so kind of what I said before, I think relationship building is key. So when you build a relationship with people, they're more likely to donate. And again, I think it's also really important to really showcase, like the people who are behind a nonprofit, what your nonprofit is, and sort of the behind the scenes, basically to build that familiarity with people. Because the more that people are familiar with your nonprofit, you build that trust factor. That's really key to donating. And I know that for me, like when I like to donate to a nonprofit, I want to really know what that nonprofit is, where my money is going towards,
Mhm.
and what is the difference that's going to be made. I need to be able to trust that my money is going to be doing something. So if you can really show if you can really demonstrate how somebody's donation or their participation in your fundraising is really going to make a difference and really drive a change, you will get more people who are going to be willing to donate. So I would say demonstrating impact on LinkedIn. So again, even though I don't encourage always posting like, hey, here's our donation link, please, don't contribute whatever amount of money, really show like what is going on behind the scenes. Like our organization was able to do this last year because of all the people who supported our nonprofit or our communities, and and being grateful. Like we really thank our volunteers, we thank our donors, because of them we were able to achieve X, Y, and Z. That's really going to get people. I mean, you might not even need to share that donation link. They might just go look it up themselves or click on your nonprofit and say, think like, oh, I want to donate too. So I think showing impact is very important. And then, of course, educating people about a lot of these issues that are happening. For example, like I really care about animal welfare myself, but I might not know like some specific issue that's happening with one specific endangered species somewhere far away. So this is an opportunity to inform people about what's going on, and then introduce ways that they can be involved. Like, here's what you can do. Especially when we are hearing about an issue, the first thing I want to know is, well, what can I do about it?
Right.
Because it might be something that kind of compels you to do feel that way, or it's really sad, for example. So this is a way to just inform about the issue, and then invite people to take an action about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to thank you. I got one question that's not here, but I think you
Hmm.
got it. So
Yeah.
let's say we talked a little bit about scheduling, right? But let's say, and I'm trying to think like I used to think when I sat in that seat. So if I have a Facebook and I have a LinkedIn, can I use the exact same language that I put on Facebook on LinkedIn? Or should there be a difference?
I think it depends on what the content is and what it's about. I think in a lot of cases I've seen like posts be very similar and they perform, equally as well.
Okay.
Again, like LinkedIn, I think what some of the things that might be different are like how you tag people. Like on LinkedIn, you might tag like certain members of your organization or certain influential people, where you wouldn't do that as much on Facebook because, again, like profiles are a little bit more private. So I think that's a key difference that I've noticed in LinkedIn content versus Facebook content. But yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of there would be like overlap, of course. But again, like on LinkedIn, I think it's more easier to have like certain discussions. So I think like driving certain conversations might be a little bit different on LinkedIn. So maybe some of the questions that you might ask, that
Mm-hmm.
might be something that varies a bit from Facebook. But an example, like if you're going to, if you have a volunteer event and you have some photos you want to share, like, the content can be very similar to each other.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. I got one more for you. You're
Mhm.
like, that's not on the list of but I got
Yeah.
one more for you.
Yeah.
How is this a true statement? Have no more than 3 hashtags when you're posting on LinkedIn.
That's a good question. I think with LinkedIn, I think with hashtags, what really matters is, one is obviously the relevance, but also how much it's used in searches. So yes, you can have like a specific hashtag to your nonprofit. I know some people will just hashtag their nonprofit, and that's fine. I would say those should be no more than three. But in terms of having other ones, you can have multiple, but I think it's really important to have hashtags that are common things that people will look up. So, like, for example, if you're a nonprofit that is about combating climate change. There's a lot of really important hashtags to use for posts like climate justice, environment, sustainability, zero waste. These are really trending hashtags, popular words that will help get your content discovered by using them. So I would say think about it more from a search perspective rather than being super specific and super branded. Like those are great to have too, but I would say for those should be no more than three. If it's not getting a lot of, and sometimes I know on Instagram, like you can see how much that hashtag is being used, like how many
Mhm.
posts. It'll say 100 posts or 1,000 posts. But if you're seeing something with a million posts, like those might be hashtags to think about for using. So I think it's more important to think about like only use specific hashtags that are relevant to the post. I think is important. So it's not just about like I must fill in 30 hashtags or I can only limit to three. I would say just think about the most common words that are being used in searches and use those hashtags. So that could be 8 one day, that could be 7 another day. Depends on the content that you're sharing.
Okay, that makes sense. Just don't go hashtag crazy, I guess, and make sure it's relevant, like you said. So I'm gonna check and see if there's any questions, comments, see if we can get here and check over here. I do see some comments. It might be good morning. I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that we check that. And I'm gonna check one more spot. If no one has a question, the most common question that I get is, Sabrina, can you help me with engaging my board in fundraising? And I'm going to say the answer is a resounding yes, right? So the next step you have to do is just visit my website at www.supportingworldhope and you can get the information there. So let me go into the group. We're streaming in 4 different places, Noreen. So I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that I capture any questions. And someone said, I think you answered I asked a lot of questions that was on the list. So I captured a lot of people's questions here. One more thing. I do have one because I see Andrea here and I see Arlena here, and they are in that, everybody's in that nonprofit space. But here's the deal. I've visited a lot of LinkedIn profiles that don't have their LinkedIn banners. How critical is a LinkedIn banner?
Are you referring to the cover image or
Mm-hmm.
the
The
cover
cover image.
image? I think it's really irrelevant. I think it's very important
Okay.
because it helps with your brand. It shows the brand of your organization. It really I think it gives like a bigger picture of like what your nonprofit is. It gives an idea. So I would say yes, have a cover image. Again, like if you are, an animal shelter, an animal welfare organization, you can have like a banner image of like the different animals that you typically have at your shelter, the animals that you help, advocate for. And I would say like having like maybe even just some keywords of some of the impacts you have, like we've achieved this, just or we help this number of animals a year or whatever it is that you do, like having a cover image is not only that it helps with your brand, but you can also have a cover image that shows the impact that you have, like the biggest difference that you were able to make. Like that's what is the first thing you want people to know about your nonprofit. I would think about it in those terms and have that be represented in the banner image that you put. So yes, I would say definitely utilize all of those things that LinkedIn is offering, all of those features they're offering, and make the most of it. So definitely have a cover image and have that be the thing that you want people to know the most about your organization, the
Okay.
first thing you would want them to know. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I have one question here. So if you haven't used LinkedIn for your nonprofit, what would be the top 3 things to focus on to begin with?
Yes. So I would say first is optimizing the profile. So creating that profile putting the the profile picture, the banner image, those keywords that we mentioned that people would search. So I'd say filling up as much details as possible and getting that profile to be as optimized as much as you can. Then I would invite people in your network to follow the page. Get people to start following it. So find the people that are either in your network or people that have certain titles that are related to the field of your nonprofit. And then you can start with putting like a first few posts of sharing some of the most like if there are certain things, certain toolkits or resources that you have, I would start with that. Start sharing those pieces first. And then get into those conversations to start posting content that drives discussions, asking people questions and inviting people to share their thoughts and opinions, or if they find the post useful, that to share it with their own network, to repost it. So really getting the organization out there in front of people on LinkedIn is one of the key things you want to do first.
Okay. And I have one last question here. Arlena posted, would you recommend paying for premium to get insight?
You don't have to. I don't think it's the most important. I mean, I think it can definitely be helpful, but I don't think it's like a huge thing that people would be missing out on. I think there's a lot that you can do organically with nonprofits. I mean, I've seen nonprofits grow from 0 to over 1,000 followers within a short period of time, like maybe within a month at most, at least. And it's really, I think I would say focusing more on having those conversations and finding people to network and networking with people and participating in conversations are probably the most useful things you can do on LinkedIn. Than using some of the premium features or running advertising campaigns. So I'm not saying not to do them. I think they are great if you have the capacity and the budget to invest in that. Like if you do have the capacity to invest in those features, they can be useful. But I think you could make a lot out of LinkedIn just through the organic ways.
Perfect. I have one last question. That's my question. I'm all about not reinventing the wheel. So I'm going
Mhm.
to put you on the spot again, Noreen. Is
Mhm.
there one nonprofit profile that's on LinkedIn that's kind of knocking it out of the park that we can go look at?
For organizations, one that comes to mind, which is one I follow, is World Wildlife Fund. And I would say their social media across the board, like their Instagram is killing it, their Facebook is killing it. They're very good with all the things I talked about today. They implement those strategies. They have really great, compelling visual content on there, and they really demonstrate their impact. So I would say like that's a great one to look into and to follow. And they're very great with partnering with other organizations and driving discussions that touch upon a variety of issues that are intersected with the issues that they talk about. And they do in such a streamlined way and a very easy to understand way. And their content is, it feels very like I understand what they're talking about. So it's definitely, it's very transparent and very easy to follow.
Perfect. Perfect. We're right at 10:45. So I want to thank you. And I want you to share how people can get in contact with you and any final words that you have.
Yeah. So to get in touch with me, I am on LinkedIn. So you can find me by finding my name. And then my Instagram is at NQ Creative CEO Co. And then I also have a Facebook page, which is under NQ Creative. And then my website is nqcreative.com. And you can contact me through that website. And the other question was, what was the
Oh, there's another question.
second?
Did I
Oh,
miss the question? It was a grant related question. I'm
oh,
not sure if it's relevant to Facebook. I mean, no, with this nonprofit, I think they're having a side conversation about
oh, okay.
yeah, I think that's what's going on there. So, and I'm looking one last time here
Yeah.
on the other platforms to see if there's any questions that we didn't capture. Thank you for being so checking in on that. I do see a comment here. No, that's the same. So I can see some of them here. So we answer Arlena's question. So
Nice.
thank you. I want to make sure that people know where they can find you, which is NQ Creative.
Mhm. Yes.
Yes, if you just remember that, you then can get there to a website, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the platforms, right?
Yes.
So Noreen, thank you so much for
Thank
being here
you.
and sharing your knowledge. And it's been very informative, even for me. And I really appreciate it. So my team, I leave you with this. Your mission matters and deserves to be highlighted in your community. Your mission matters and can be an inspiration to those who need it the most. Your mission matters and deserves to be funded to its fullest capacity. And that's Sipping Tea with Sabrina. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.